Chapter 2, Al-Baqarah, verses 221 through 242, outline detailed Islamic laws regarding marriage, divorce, and related family matters, emphasizing fairness, piety, and compassion. The verses prohibit marrying idolaters, establish the rules for divorce and reconciliation, regulate the waiting period for women, and outline provisions for divorce before and after consummation. The Holy Quran, chapter 2, verses 221 to 42. I seek refuge in Allah from the rejected Satan, in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. Allah the Exalted says in verse 221 of chapter 2, marry not the women who associate others with Allah in His divinity until they believe. For a believing slave girl is better than a free, respectable woman who associates others with Allah in His divinity, even though she might please you. Likewise, do not give your women in marriage to men who associate others with Allah in His divinity until they believe. For a believing slave is better than a free, respectable man who associates others with Allah in His divinity, even though he might please you. Such people call you towards the fire, and Allah calls you by His leave towards paradise and forgiveness. And He makes His injunctions clear to people so that they may take heed. Commenting on this verse, Syed Maududi says in his Tafsir Tafhimul Quran, this verse gives us the reason for and the wisdom underlying the injunction mentioned above prohibiting marriage links with polytheists. Marriage does not consist merely of intimate relations between a man and a woman. It is a relationship which has deep social, moral, and emotional implications. If established between a believer and a polytheist, this kind of relationship has many possible outcomes. On the one hand, it is possible that because of the influence of the believing spouse, the other partner, the family, and the future generations may become receptive to Islamic beliefs and to the Islamic way of life. On the other hand, it is also possible that the spouse who is a polytheist may influence the thinking and mode of living of the believing spouse, the family, and the future generations. Moreover, this relationship may promote in that family a hodgepodge of Islam, downright atheism and polytheism, which, however welcome to non-Muslims, is in no way acceptable to Islam. No true believer can run the risk that either the ideas and lifestyles which are organically related to atheism and polytheism may flourish among the members of his family, or that some aspect of his own life may bear the impress of atheism or polytheism. Next, verse 222. They ask you about menstruation. Say, it is a state of impurity. So keep away from women in the state of menstruation, and do not approach them until they are cleansed. And when they are cleansed, then come to them as Allah has commanded you. Truly Allah loves those who abstain from evil and keep themselves pure. In this verse, the Arabic word adha denotes both a state of ritual impurity and sickness. Menstruation is not merely an impurity, but also a state in which the woman is closer to sickness than to health. With regard to matters such as these, the Quran resorts to metaphors and figurative language. Hence, it instructs men not to approach women. This does not mean that people should either abstain from sitting together on the same floor or eating together when a woman has her monthly period, making her virtually untouchable, as has been the custom among the Jews, Hindus, and certain other nations. The explanation of this injunction by the Prophet, peace be on him, makes it clear that during this period men are only required to abstain from sexual intercourse. No change is postulated in other relationships, and the woman is to be treated in the normal way. Next, verse 223, your wives are your tilth. Go then into your tilth as you wish, but take heed of your ultimate future, and avoid incurring the wrath of Allah. Know well that one day you shall face him. Announce good tidings to the believers. Here is an explanation of the verse. God's purpose in the creation of women is not merely to provide men with recreation. Their mutual relationship is like that between a farmer and his tilth. A farmer approaches his field not just for the sake of pleasure, but to acquire produce. Similarly, man ought to approach the tilth of the human race with the purpose of acquiring produce, that is, offspring. What is of concern to the law of God is not the particular mode of cultivating one's tilth, but rather that one should go only to one's tilth and not elsewhere, and that one should go there for the purpose of cultivation. The latter part of the verse contains the warning that those who deliberately neglect their duties will be severely taken to task by God. These tasks may be understood as follows. Firstly, a person should try to maintain the continuity of the human race so that when he departs from this world, there should be others to replace him in his tasks. Secondly, that one should be concerned with the quality of the coming generation, i.e., how far it is endowed with religious devotion, moral excellence, and humanity, and that one should do all that is possible to promote these qualities. Next, in verse 224, Allah, the Exalted, says, "Do not swear by Allah in your oaths if they are intended to hinder you from virtue, piety, or promoting the good of mankind. Surely Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing." Relating to oaths, authentic traditions indicate that if a person takes a vow and discovers later that righteousness and common good are best served by breaking that vow, then he should do so. Expiation consists in either feeding or providing clothes for 10 poor people, or setting a slave free, or fasting for 3 days, see chapter 5, verse 89. Next, in verse 225, Allah the Exalted says, "Allah will not take you to task for the oaths you utter in vain, but will certainly take you to task for the oaths you utter in earnest. Allah is all-forgiving, all-forbearing." This verse refers to oaths which one utters either through habit or without any intent and purpose. The breach of such vows neither entails expiation nor makes a person liable to God's reproach. Verse 226. For those who vow abstinence from their wives, there is a respite of 4 months. Then, if they go back on their vow, they will find that Allah is all-forgiving, all-compassionate. According to Ali, Ibn Abbas, and Hassan al-Basri, this injunction is related to the cessation of sexual relations as a result of unpleasantness in the relationship of the spouses. It would not apply, however, if a husband were to decide to abandon sexual relations with his wife out of some beneficial consideration, say because the wife is breastfeeding, at a time when their relationship was pleasant. According to other jurists, however, any vow which prevents sexual intercourse between a husband and wife is ilah and ought not to last longer than 4 months, irrespective of the state of the matrimonial relationship when it was taken. Some jurists have interpreted this verse to signify that if the spouses break their vow and re-establish sexual relations, they will not be liable to any expiation and will be pardoned by God gratuitously. However, the majority of jurists are of the opinion that they are required to expiate. The statement that God is oft forgiving and merciful does not mean that God has forgiven them. It means rather that God will accept their expiation and will forgive them for whatever excesses they may have committed against each other. We now move on to next verse 227, which continues with the same subject. Allah, the Exalted, says, "And if they resolve on divorce, surely Allah is all-hearing, all-knowing." Moving along, next is verse 228. "Divorced women shall keep themselves waiting for 3 menstrual courses, and it is unlawful for them, if they believe in Allah and the last day, to hide whatever Allah might have created in their wombs. Should their husbands desire reconciliation during this time, they are entitled to take them back into wedlock. Women have the same rights against their men as men have against them, but men have a degree above them. Allah is all-powerful, all-wise, Jurists disagree about the legal import of this verse. According to some, as long as a woman has not completed her third menstrual period, repudiation will not have the effect of irrevocable divorce. This is the view of Abu Bakr, Umar, Ali, Ibn Abbas, Abu Musa al-Ash'al, Ibn Mas'ud, and several distinguished companions of the Prophet. This is also the accepted doctrine of the Hanafi jurists. On the other hand, another group of jurists is of the view that as soon as the third monthly period of a woman begins, the husband ceases to have the right to revoke the divorce. This is the view of Aisha ibn Umar and Zayd ibn Thabit, and has been accepted by the Shafi'i and Maliki jurists. It should be clear, however, that this injunction is applicable only when the husband has pronounced single or double divorce. In case of triple divorce, the husband ceases to have the right of revocation. Let's now take up verse 2 and 29. Allah Ta'ala says, "Divorce can be pronounced twice. Then either honorable retention or kindly release should follow. While dissolving the marriage tie, it is unlawful for you to take back anything of what you have given to your wives unless both fear that they may not be able to keep within the bounds set by Allah. Then, if they fear that they might not be able to keep within the bounds set by Allah, there is no blame upon them for what the wife might give away of her property to become released from the marriage tie. These are the bounds set by Allah. Do not transgress them. Those of you who transgress the bounds set by Allah are indeed the wrongdoers." Next is verse 230. "Then, if he divorces her for the third time, after having pronounced the divorce twice, she shall not be lawful to him unless she first takes another man for a husband, and he divorces her. There is no blame upon them if both of them return to one another thereafter, provided they think that they will be able to keep within the bounds set by Allah. These are the bounds of Allah which He makes clear to a people who have knowledge of the consequences of violating those bounds. It is known from authentic traditions that it is totally illegitimate for a person to arrange the marriage of his divorced wife with someone else on the understanding that the latter will divorce her to make it possible for the former husband to recontract marriage with that woman. Such trickery would in fact be an act of sheer sexual corruption and would not render the woman liable to remarriage with her former husband. According to a tradition transmitted from Ali ibn Mas'ud, Abu Huraira, and Uqba ibn Amir, the Prophet, peace be on him, pronounced his curse on those who arrange as well as on those who agree to contract such fictitious marriages. Next, verse 231. "And so, when you divorce women, and they reach the end of their waiting term, then either retain them in a fair manner, or let them go in a fair manner. And do not retain them to their hurt, or by way of transgression. Whosoever will do that will indeed wrong himself. Do not take the signs of Allah in jest, and remember Allah's favor upon you. He exhorts you to revere the book and the wisdom that He has sent down upon you. Fear Allah, and know well that Allah has full knowledge of everything." According to this verse, it is absolutely improper that a person should revoke the divorce he pronounced on his wife before the lapse of the period of waiting, merely in order to use this revocation as a pretext to harass and torment her. God commands that if a person revokes the divorce, this decision should be prompted by a sincere desire to live together amicably. Should that intention be lacking, it is better to part company in a graceful manner. Muslims should not forget that by teaching them the book and wisdom, God entrusted them with the glorious task of guiding the world. They should also not forget that they were appointed as the community of the middle way and appointed as witnesses to good and righteousness.
It does not become them, therefore, to indulge in sophistry and to play with the verses of the Book of God, to exploit the words of the law to their advantage in achieving ends counter to its spirit, and to slump into injustice and other evil behavior instead of directing the world to the right way.
Verse 232. When you divorce women and they have completed their waiting term, do not hinder them from marrying other men if they have agreed to this in a fair manner. That is an admonition to every one of you who believes in Allah and the last day. That is a cleaner and purer way for you. For Allah knows whereas you do not know. This verse gives a directive to the relatives of the divorced woman. When a woman is divorced by her husband and he fails to revoke the divorce before the expiry of the waiting period, the relatives of the woman should not try to prevent the couple from remarrying if they agree to do so. This verse may also be interpreted to mean that if a divorced woman wants to contract marriage with someone other than her former husband after the expiry of the waiting period, the former husband should not obstruct this marriage by making malicious propaganda against the woman he has forsaken. Next, verse 233. If they, that is the fathers, wish that the period of suckling for their children be completed, mothers may suckle their children for 2 whole years. In such a case, it is incumbent upon him who has begotten the child to provide them, that is, divorced women, their sustenance and clothing in a fair manner. But none shall be burdened with more than he is able to bear. Neither shall a mother suffer because of her child, nor shall the father be made to suffer because he has begotten him. The same duty towards the suckling mother rests upon the heir as upon him, that is, the father. And if both the parents decide by mutual consent and consultation to wean the child, there is no blame on them. If you decide to have other women suckle your children, there is no blame upon you, provided you hand over its compensation in a fair manner. Fear Allah and know well that Allah sees all that you do. In this verse, the injunction of 2 whole years applies to the condition where the couple have separated either because of divorce, or kul or fask, which is annulment, or tafriq, which is repudiation as a result of judicial decision, and the woman is nursing a child. Also, it tells us that if the father dies, whoever replaces him as the guardian of the child will be responsible for fulfilling this claim. Next, verse 234. Allah, the Exalted, says, "The wives of men who have died must observe a waiting period of 4 months and 10 days. When they have reached the end of the waiting term, there is no blame upon you regarding what they may do with themselves in a fair manner. Allah is well aware of what you do." Now let's reflect on this verse with a brief commentary from Tafhimul Quran. The waiting period owing to the death of the husband is obligatory, even for a woman with whom consummation of marriage has not taken place. However, a pregnant woman is exempted from this. Her waiting period expires with the husband's death and the childbirth, if that happens to be less than the waiting period prescribed by law. To observe a waiting period doesn't just mean refraining from marrying, but also from adornment. So, we find clear directives in the hadith that a widow should neither wear colorful and showy dresses and jewelry, nor make use of henna, kohl, and perfumes, nor set her hair in an attractive style. There is, however, some disagreement about whether the widow may go out of her house during the waiting period. Umar, Uthman ibn Umar, Zayd ibn Thabit, ibn Mas'ud, Salama, Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, Ibrahim al-Nakhai, Muhammad ibn Sirin, and the founders of the 4 legal schools are of the opinion that during the waiting period, a woman should stay in the house in which her husband died. During the daytime, she may go out to do necessary errands, but her residence should be her own home. On the other hand, Aisha ibn Abbas, Ali, Jabir ibn Abdullah, Ata, Taus, Hassan al-Basri, Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz, and the Zahiris are of the opinion that a widow may spend her waiting period wherever she likes, and may even go on journeys. Next, we move to verses 235 to 238. Allah the Exalted says, "There is no blame upon you whether you hint at a marriage proposal to such women, or keep the proposal hidden in your hearts. Allah knows that you will think of them in that connection, but do not make any secret engagement with them, and speak openly in an honorable manner. Do not resolve the marriage tie until the ordained term has come to its end. Know well that Allah knows even what is in your hearts. So, have fear of Him, and know well that Allah is all forgiving, all forbearing. There is no blame upon you if you divorce your wives before you have touched them or settled a bridal gift upon them. But even in this case you should make some provision for them. The affluent according to his means, the straitened according to his means, a provision in fair manner. That is a duty upon the good doers. And if you divorce them before you touch them or settle a bridal gift upon them, then give them half of what you have settled, unless either the women act leniently and forego their claim, or he in whose hand is the marriage tie acts leniently and pays the full amount. If you act leniently, it is closer to God-fearing. And forget not to act gracefully with one another, for indeed Allah sees all that you do. Be watchful over the prayers, and over praying with the utmost excellence, and stand before Allah as would utterly obedient servants." Now let's consider a commentary on this last verse, 238, from Tafhimul Quran. After mentioning the laws for the guidance of human society, Allah Ta'ala concludes this address by emphasizing prayer, because it is prayer that instills in a person the fear of God. Prayers nurture feelings of goodness and purity, and the disposition to obey the ordinances of God, while also fostering adherence to righteousness. Without prayer, it would honestly be impossible for people to persist in observing the laws of God, and they'd likely be swept away by a current of defiance and disobedience, just as happened in the case of the Jews. The expression al-Salat al-Wusta has been interpreted in various ways. Some say it refers to the morning, midday, sunset, or night prayers. But there's no direct statement from the Hadith explaining this expression. All the different opinions are deductions made by scholars. The majority opinion, it seems, leans toward the afternoon, or Asr prayer, as it's claimed that on one occasion the Prophet, peace be upon him, alluded to this as al-Salat al-Wusta. The event cited is that during the Battle of the Ditch, the Prophet was so preoccupied with the siege of Medina by the polytheists that he couldn't perform his Asr prayer on time, and the time of sunset was drawing close. On that occasion, the Prophet said, "O Allah, fill their graves and their homes with fire as they have kept us busy from Salat al-Wusta, the middle prayer, until the sunset." This statement led people to believe that the midmost prayer referred to the Asr prayer. It seems more likely, though, that the Prophet meant the cares of battle had prevented him and his followers from performing the prayer in an excellent way. The delay meant that instead of praying with equanimity, concentration, and total devotion, they were forced by circumstances to pray hurriedly. The adjective wusta, in addition to signifying the middle position, also signifies excellence. So, the expression could legitimately be interpreted both as the middle prayer and as the prayer performed at the right time and with full devotion and attention to God. A prayer which contains all the attributes of excellence. The admonition that follows, "Stand before Allah as utterly obedient servants," seems to indicate what was meant by the midmost prayer. Next are verses 239 to 242. As these continue with the subject, Allah, the Exalted, says, "And even if you face the state of fear, still perform the prayer whether on foot or riding. And when you are secure, remember Allah in the manner that He taught you, the manner that you did not know earlier. Those of you who die leaving behind your wives should make testament of 1 year's provision without expulsion in favor of your wives. And if they themselves depart, there shall be no blame upon you for what they may do with themselves in an honorable manner. Allah is almighty, all-wise. Likewise, let there be a fair provision for the divorced women. This is an obligation on the God-fearing. Thus Allah makes his injunctions clear to you that you may understand.